Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today I'll be doing episode 66, technically episode 66, because this is another one of those episodes that wasn't banned, but due to scheduling conflicts because of the Porygon episode, this episode never aired in some places, so it came out later than it should have. So that's another reason why you will see Charmander as opposed to Charizard. You can just take this as taking place right after the Jinx episode, I guess. That's how I'm taking it. The episode begins with Ash and the gang wandering through the forest when they come across a fork in the road. Brock takes a look at his map to get some information on what direction they should go, but Ash immediately just suggests that they go one way without even thinking about where it could potentially lead them. Brock confirms that the way Ash chose leads up to a mountain, leading Misty to complain, as she didn't want to have to scale a motherfucking mountain, but Ash is just like, look, stop being lazy, I want to go this way, let's go this way. As they walk down the path, though, it's revealed that not only did the path lead to a mountain, but a motherfucking snowy mountain. This leads Brock and Misty to suggest turning back, as they obviously don't want to have to trudge through the snow, but Ash protests that this would be a great challenge for a Pokemon Master, and he could perhaps prove that he was strong enough if he was able to withstand it. Brock and Misty reluctantly carry on with Ash as they continue walking up the mountain, but it's not without any complaining, as Misty still complains the entire way there. It's so cold to the point where Ash and the gang have had to break out blankets at this point. Well, at least Brock and Misty have. Ash hadn't, as he claimed that it would be wimping out, and he didn't want to wimp out. Things then get worse for Ash and the gang, as Brock states that his compass now wasn't working, so they couldn't tell what direction they were going, and he states that this is likely because there's so much iron in the mountain that it was throwing off the compass's accuracy. This just leads Misty to complain even fucking more, annoying Ash to no end, so he decides to send out his Pidgeotto and have him look for a way off the mountain, since Misty would only stop complaining if they actually got off. Pidgeotto flies off, and after only a few minutes of searching, it returns to Ash and the gang, informing them of a way off the mountain. Let's go! As Ash and the gang follow Pidgeotto, we then see that Team Rocket is also on the mountain as well, and James is complaining as much as Misty was, with Meowth joining him, stating how freezing they were. Jessie, on the other hand, was having a great time, dancing around on the mountain, claiming how much she loved the snow. Meowth and James obviously question why Jessie loved the snow so much. Was it just because of some basic ass shit, like, oh, I love to do snow angels, oh, I love fucking the white powder or some shit? Well, for Jessie, it was a very odd reason. It was something called Snowgusboard. She goes on to explain that a smorgasbord was a smorgasbord of food, but the food was only made of snow, and that it was something that her mother always made for her as a child, and it was essentially like her one treat that she got due to being poor as fuck. But does Jessie know that snow is free? So I think that's why she probably ate it if she was poor. Meowth and James are obviously grossed out at the fact that you're eating snow, and point out the fact how there could obviously be fucking Pokemon shit inside the snow, which makes it even more gross, but Jessie clarifies that you would only use fresh snow. You think that this would please James a little bit, but he's only even more disturbed, as he pictures the desperation of people literally fucking trying to catch her snowflakes just to eat them. James and Meowth, wanting to change the subject from fucking eating snow, suggest that they go back to doing what they usually do, which is look for Ash and the gang to spy on. So they say their motto in preparation and go to head into their balloon so they can take off in search. However, they notice that their balloon is floating away due to the strong winds without them in it, so they chase after it as fast as they can, not wanting to lose it. These strong winds were evidence that a storm was on the way, and there was even more evidence as it began to snow as clouds moved overhead. As soon as Ash felt the snow, even he began to panic, despite his want to be a Pokemon Master, fearing what the light snowfall could turn into. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, who we had just left, although they had run after their balloon, screaming at it as fast as they could, it was all futile, as they had lost the balloon, much to their dissatisfaction, as they sat in the snow, pouting. Not only had they lost the balloon, but they had lost all of the few supplies that they had that were on it, including soy sauce, Jessie's favorite condiment. Jessie and James look at the snow in utter depression at the fact that they lost everything, but when Jessie looks at the snow, she's once again reminded of her Snowgusboard and suggests that they could make that for some food, but James and Meowth obviously decline. Despite this, Jessie's want for a Snowgusboard somehow gives her such immense motivation and energy that she's able to pick herself out of her depression and go chasing after the balloon once more, desperate for the goddamn soy sauce to put it on the Snowgusboard. It then reaches night, and the snow gets even worse, fucking turning into a full-on blizzard. Brock makes the smart suggestion that they stop and take a break and make a camp, but Ash denies, wanting to prove himself as a Pokemon Master through these harsh conditions. Brock rebuttals, however, that a Pokemon Master was likely supposed to be smart and knowledgeable about Pokemon, and it definitely wasn't smart to run around a snowstorm in the dark, potentially putting your Pokemon at risk. Brock then suggests that for their camp, they should dig a little cave out of the snow, and Brock and Misty proceed to begin doing this, but before Ash can join in to help, the strong winds unfortunately blow Pikachu out of his hands, sending him flying. Ash assures Brock and Misty that they should continue on the cave, not wanting them to get injured, and he then runs off to find Pikachu. He continues to search for a very long time, trudging through this thick-ass snow. Like, without even fucking snow boots, he has to run through fucking like 10 feet deep snow. Due to not having these snow boots, he falls over and face plants as he trudges through the snow, and he initially struggles to get up, but as soon as he hears Pikachu's cry, he gets motivated and gets back up on his feet, shouting for Pikachu's name. If he could hear him, then maybe Pikachu could hear him. Pikachu does in fact respond to Ash's calling, leading Ash to follow Pikachu's voice, hoping to find him, but unfortunately, all he finds is a cliff, which he is unable to fully see due to the blinding snow, and he falls down it. Coincidentally though, when Ash falls down this cliff, he looks down, only to see another cliff even further below, and it's one that Pikachu was hanging off of. He had found him! There was no time to celebrate though, as Pikachu was in danger. He could fall off the cliff at any moment. Ash immediately holds out his hand, insinuating for Pikachu to take it, but before Pikachu can make contact with his hand, he slips and falls down to another cliff. Much to Ash's relief, grabbing a hold of that one as well, so at least he doesn't fucking die. But Ash doesn't want Pikachu to just keep falling down cliff after cliff after cliff after cliff, as they would eventually run out of cliffs, so Ash comes up with a better solution, which is to send out his Bulbasaur, and have his Bulbasaur use Vine Whip to extend the vine to retrieve Pikachu. However, even this isn't enough to counter Pikachu's bad luck, as due to the strong winds, Pikachu can't hold on to the vine, and proceeds to let go, plummeting down, without a cliff to land on this time. Ash panics, not knowing what to do, fearing for Pikachu's death, but thankfully, Bulbasaur is able to act on its own, using a Vine Whip yet again, but this time to capture Pikachu, and this allows Ash to pull Pikachu back up. Ash and Pikachu then take a brief moment to just rest and look at each other in the eyes. They were finally fucking reunited, and Pikachu had finally quit falling down multiple cliffs. Pikachu knows they don't have much time to relax though, and proceeds to do a facial expression of Brock. Hopefully he doesn't get cancelled for being racist, as Brock has the closed slit eyes. This facial expression of Brock reminds Ash that he needs to get back to Ash and Brock, as they could be in danger, and he proceeds to try and climb up the little cliff that he fell off of, but he fails to do so. He then just tries calling for Misty and Brock to see if maybe they could come down and help him, like maybe they'd completed the construction of the cave, and they were coming for him, but nope, there was no answer. Great. Not being able to find them, he decides that it's best that he just wait until morning, when the snow would have probably died down by then, and he decides to dig his own cave. However, there's a lot of thick ice and very heavy snow, and it's making Ash's hands both fucking severely injured and severely frostbitten, so it's to the point where he can't dig anymore. So he decides to send out Charmander and have him use his flamethrower to melt some of the excess snow and ice, and essentially form a cave shape. He then goes inside the newly constructed cave, and decides to let out his Bulbasaur and Squirtle, and together, Ash and all of his Pokemon gather a whole bunch of snow and pile it up to create a makeshift wall in the spot where the entrance was, so that no snow could get in. Sure, this now meant that they were trapped in the cave, but they could just melt it with Charmander's flame if they needed to get out. Speaking of Charmander's flames, they have another use too, as Ash realized that all his Pokemon were likely going to freeze if they didn't get any fire, and he was pretty cold himself, so he thinks about what to do when Bulbasaur suggests that Charmander make the flame on its tail bigger, which Charmander is able to do, though it's at the cost of a lot of his energy. Despite this, Charmander goes through it without any hesitation, wanting to protect his friends, as he heats them up. Meanwhile, to get out of the storm themselves, Team Rocket had constructed their own igloo. It wasn't really working to keep them warm though, especially since they had no fire, unlike Ash, with the exception of one remaining candle that Meowth currently had going, as well as 3 unused matches. That was all that they had, otherwise they could potentially fucking freeze, much to James and Meowth's panic. Jessie wasn't panicking though, as she was too busy making Snowgus boards and attempting to offer them to James and Meowth, but despite their immense hunger, they were not desperate enough to eat snow yet. Meowth then pulls out the 3 matches that he has left and lights one, but it doesn't do anything to warm them. One fucking little match is going to do nothing against a snowstorm. This leads Team Rocket to all fantasize about being in warm places, with Jessie fantasizing about being in a desert, James fantasizing about being on a beach, and Meowth fantasizing about being in a hot tub. These thoughts unfortunately don't make them warmer, but they are calming enough to allow James and Meowth to start sleeping, but Jessie immediately wakes them up by slapping the shit out of them, warning them that if they fell asleep, they could die in their sleep and that they needed to keep moving. Meanwhile, back with Ash and his Pokemon, unfortunately for Charmander, he was running out of energy that was keeping his tail so well lit, and his tail was dying. Ash didn't want anything bad to happen to Charmander, so he proceeded to return him into his Pokeball, but Charmander initially refused, not wanting to give up. Ash then essentially forced him into the ball though, not wanting anything bad to happen. Charmander is shocked at Ash's forcefulness, and so are Squirtle and Bulbasaur, when Ash then instructs them to get back into their Pokeballs as well, as he argues that their Pokeballs are probably warmer than just sitting out here. They initially refuse too, not wanting to abandon Ash, but Ash does not care. Ash is so adamant that Pokeballs are warmer, he then orders Pikachu to get back in his, despite knowing Pikachu's complete dislike for his Pokeball. And Pikachu obviously refuses, not just because of its hatred for its Pokeball, but because it wanted to protect Ash, as it didn't want Ash to freeze all alone. Ash eventually gives up, appreciating Pikachu's appreciation to him, and he decides to let him remain out of his Pokeball as they huddle together. Now, I would accuse Ash of just playing favorites here, but maybe he just really didn't want Pikachu to have to endure the hell of its Pokeballs. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But anyways, after a few more hours of being in the cave, it starts to get even colder, to the point where Ash even starts to doubt that the Pokeballs were keeping his other Pokemon warm enough, so he decides to fucking sacrifice his own warmth, which was already gone, by taking off his jacket and covering his Pokeballs with it, to give them extra warmth, and him less warmth. Damn, what a fucking champ. I know I always shit on Ash, but this was a very good episode for him. He's very kind. Despite his kindness though, he can't stop being cursed with bad luck, as then the entrance to the cave then fucking gets destroyed by the blizzard. They thought that it was strong enough, but unfortunately not. At least the entire entrance wasn't destroyed, it was just a hole, so Ash was able to block the hole by using himself, but that wasn't gonna last forever, as he was gonna fucking die of cold if he had to do that for a long period of time. Despite this though, that's what he's willing to do, even as Pikachu protests. Ash then orders Pikachu to get into his Pokeball, forgetting about what he promised him earlier, as the situation was different now. Like, the snow was blowing in, Pikachu was going to be in danger if he didn't get into warmth. Pikachu still refuses though, leading Ash to state that Ash would feel more comfortable if Pikachu was in the Pokeball, hoping that he could essentially guilt trip Pikachu into going into for his own safety. But Pikachu refuses once again. He just doesn't want to go into the ball. Ash tries one more time, but this just causes all of his other Pokemon to essentially get mad at how hard Ash was trying. as they all essentially pull a Psyduck and forcefully come out of their Pokeballs and proceed to all huddle around Ash in order to warm him, essentially stating that all they wanted to do was protect their trainer, and Ash wasn't respecting that. Ash is immensely proud and shocked at the utter lengths that his Pokemon were willing to go to protect him, to the point where he starts to cry in both happiness and a hint of sadness that he didn't listen to their request earlier, still acknowledging that it was the best call, but he realized that if his Pokemon were willing to protect him and they wanted to brave the same things that he had to, then he should let them. He remarks that they should be cold together. Man, this is such a heartwarming episode. I know it's technically filler, but it doesn't feel like filler with the amount of growing that has happened between Ash and his Pokemon. Anyways, Ash and his Pokemon cuddle all night, keeping each other as warm as possible, and when morning arrives, Ash has Charmander use his flamethrower to melt the remains of the entrance of the cave, and they escape. Ash and his Pokemon look at the view to see that it had finally stopped snowing and was actually sunny for once. Let's fucking go! To make matters even better, Ash then hears voices calling from a distance. It's Misty and Brock, who had now come looking for Ash finally since the storm had subsided. Onyx was walking with them too, and he proceeds to lift up all of Ash's Pokemon, grateful to see them. Ash, Misty, and Brock then all question each other on how they managed to survive during the snowstorm, with Ash revealing his cave story with his Pokemon, and Brock and Misty revealing their much more luxurious story, being that they had Onyx locate an underground hot spring and dig to it, and then they stayed in it all night, which Misty confirms was very, very comfortable. This obviously makes Ash jealous as fuck. You mean him and his Pokemon had to suffer all night, while Brock and Misty got to have the time of their lives? Ash's displeasure immediately goes away though, as Ash and the gang then spot Team Rocket's balloon right beside them, indicating that the storm had made it drift all the way to their location. It was currently deflated due to the storm, but Brock then sent out his Vulpix to have it use flamethrower to ignite the balloon's air valve. This allows the balloon to fly as Ash and the gang hijack it, finally beginning to fly away from the mountain. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, unfortunately for them, the sun was bright enough to melt away their igloo, but it was still fucking cold, to the point where they had to pinch each other's cheeks in order to stay awake, otherwise they would freeze. They eventually stop pinching each other's cheeks though, as now they have another reason to move and keep warm, being to chase their balloon, which they spot Ash and the gang piloting, much to their annoyance. However, they're not able to catch up to the balloon in the slightest, as they fall off of a cliff. However, this wasn't a bad thing, as the cliff leads them into a hot spring, maybe even the same one that Brock and Misty found. They quickly forget about their balloon, amazed at the heat that they were finally feeling. They moan so loud at the pleasure they were getting from this heat that Ash thinks he hears them as the balloon flies over top of them. The episode then ends with Ash and the gang arriving over top of a town. They had finally made it away from the mountain and back to civilization. We then see Team Rocket one more time, who ironically were now complaining about the hot spring being too hot, and they went to go get out to cool down, but they still stated that it was too cold outside as well. So basically, they were either too cold or too hot. Damn, sucks to be them.